Hi, welcome to class. We're the only two right now, but the other ones will show up eventually, right? I hate my life. I hate my life. And Professor Sunrise Productions!
Hello class, Professor Sunrise here. First of all, sorry for the awful lighting. You can see it flickering because the one line of the switches is broken. Anyways, you don't really care about that. It's bad lighting, but once I am in the small cam, it should be fine. Anyways, the Banlist hit, and it's a very small hit, and it's very weird, and because we are basically the only hit deck which got hit, apart from Kashtira, it is gonna be very significant for us as a direct hit, but the indirect changes to the metagame should still benefit us greatly. So without further ado, don't forget to seal pass on the subscribe button, leave some feedback down in the comment section below, and let's get right into that reaction. So, of course, the elephant in the room, Kashtira Rysart being banned is actually a really huge buff for Dragon Link, of course. Kashtira Rysart is the single thing which kept Dragon Link from, in my opinion, being the best deck in the format. It just being an auto win against the deck. You have basically no play against it whatsoever, especially once the effect is alive. You can theoretically out it if it doesn't have the effect alive, but realistically, even if it's only one material, a Rysart, once you actually get to a play which would force it out, the Rysart is gonna be able to activate its effect and still crush you. So if this is on the board and you don't have non-engine to out it, it was always an auto loss. So that deck getting hit is huge for us, making it so much easier to play the game if it wasn't for Magnamut 2-1 and Chaos Base 2-1. So what do these hits do to us? I will get to it later, but for now, Magnamut 2-1 is definitely fine. It just changes up the way we have to play. Consistency-wise, it's a small hit, but it's definitely not major. You can play very easy swap outs for that. Think of Noctivision, maxing out Serenier no matter what, stuff like that. So we should definitely be fine. Chaos Base 2-1 is the other hit. It does make us not lose to Ash nearly as often anymore because we don't rely on a playstarter like that. But very importantly, this is a card which helps us play through spot removal in the form of books especially. So going second, this can be a very detrimental hit to us. So I still think we are in a very fine spot, but more on that later. And the rest of the ban list is basically non-existent. Herald of Orange Light, who the fuck cares? And Gazelle. Ooh, okay, that was super obvious because of all of the Salamangreat support. What are we missing in this list? Honestly, not too much. I think these are very fine hits, and they're very understandable. Hitting a Rysart, of course, was very welcome. And with that, I think they had to hit Dragon Link as well, because in my opinion, it would have been the best deck in the format. So these are very fine hits. I like them. They don't kill the deck outright. They don't hit seals, so they hit the resource loop perfectly with Magnamut 2-1, and then one more of the playstarters. I would have liked a normal summon reliant playstarter, so maybe safer 2-1, because Chaos Base was just such a cool card, but that's definitely fine. What still would have needed to be on the list for me to actually being perfect, because I really like the format right now, would have been Prosperity 2-1, but because of the recent reprints, they probably are saving that for a later time. So now that we talked about the list, let's talk about all of the ramifications for Dragon Link, how I think Dragon Link will adapt to the current format. Let's get into that. So let's take a look at all of my first thoughts for the new post-September banlist dragons. We will be taking a look at our consistency and our engine in general, best decks of the current format, or the new format I should say, and then how the staples will probably change. Of course, especially the last spot can definitely change a lot, but I think this spot is very clear, and I've made a lot of thoughts about this one already because Magnamut 2-1 was the most obvious hit ever. So let's take a look at the consistency in our own engine. 3 Serenier is going to be mandatory. Getting it into the graveyard, sending a Lubellion, and then using Dragon Ravine to send a Safer is going to be a staple play to get us into our Magnamut. Regained is also going to be king. Being able to recycle Magnamut with the Regained is the easiest way to trigger Magnamut after we already went through it. Recycling it is going to be kind of hard, so I think Regained is going to be a very good card for us. We could even think about playing Chaos Emperor, but who knows. We definitely want to play more Noctivisions to just cycle through those Magnamut hits, because Noctivision was so close of getting into our deck. Now with Magnamut being gone, we will at least play 1, probably 2, maybe even 3. Maybe we want to stick closer to 40 cards to increase our consistency of seeing a playable hand. With playable hand, I mean, of course, having like this roughly 90% chance of seeing a normal summon or a way for a dark monster, a dark dragon obviously, into the graveyard, so that we can use our Bystials to continue popping off. So maybe we need to go closer to 40 because there's no real replacement for Chaos Base, because Small World doesn't do enough, especially with the Rysart being out of the format, having the flexibility of being a very good going second card against 2 broken decks right now with Purely and Kashtira is just not there anymore. Just against Purely, it's probably not good enough. So I don't think this is gonna be a playable thing, especially because 60 cards just get little worse or way worse because of less Chaos Base and less Magnemite. So we probably don't want to play Small World. And then after Dortmund, we could think about playing the Abelsta engine. It is the cleanest way and the most beneficial way of getting a level 4 or lower dragon onto the board without the use of a normal summon. We also get to draw one, or like cycle one, I'd say, during the process. And if we play 3 black metal, which we want to do with 1 Chaos Base anyways, we can also play the Meteor Dragon, and that way we have the ability to get an additional body of the Diabelsta engine as well. So we could definitely think about playing that after Dortmund with only 2 Chaos Base. So definitely keep that in mind, even in Dragon Link, not only in Mystic Control, what was my theory until now. Let's talk about the new best decks. Of course, we have Unchained, which is probably going to be a tier 0 deck, at least for YCS Dortmund. Afterwards, maybe things will chain up. Get it? But for Dortmund, it's definitely going to be the deck to beat. And it's the deck to beat right now. It didn't get hit whatsoever. So definitely think about that. Then next, we have Purely. Not having to deal with all of the hate against Kashtira, which also happens to hit the Purely deck. This is definitely going to take a huge increase in top percentage. So be respectful for that. Branded Chimera being such a strong deck, not really caring about all of the steel stuff, just having a very good resource loop is definitely very strong. Actually, you do a little bit care about the all of the steel cards, but still a very solid card. It's just really not that clean that Chimera destroys in hand, I think. So it does trigger the Unchained card, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I should look this up. It actually doesn't, so maybe it's still in a good spot, but it hasn't really performed yet. Having a shit ton of non-engine pieces and very strong one-card starters is of course a very good concept in theory, but maybe the starters are just not good enough. It just hasn't really picked up. Of course, it's gonna get some more representation now that people are not able to play cash, but I don't think it's gonna be like in the top 2. I think these are the top 2, and then afterwards it's like something of those decks, us included. Next, for anti-meta decks, for now, I think big combo piles, which just don't get any respect for now because Unchained is not playing any hand trap whatsoever apart from Nibiru, are like in a very good position. King Calamity is still legal. Rika can still do annoying stuff going first, post, side. If you don't have hand traps, you just auto lose against them because they either skip your turn or you're only allowed to activate 1 spell. So if the spell is not a Dark Ruler, you will 100% lose against those decks. So those could definitely pick up some steam. And then also Flunder because it completely invalidates Unchained. Flunder, we have to be scared of. It's even harder of a matchup than Kashtira. So if this happens, we need to start to respect that deck again, which can be a little bit annoying, but Droll can do wonders against those. Then maybe even Tier. If that happens, we are very fine with that. I just lost a game against Tier today, but I think this is probably not gonna happen all too often. So if Tier gets into the format because it just gasses through Unchained decks, and Unchained cannot really, or like any deck here in the format, cannot really make use out of the mills, we are in a very good spot. For the staple changes, of course, these are very theoretical because, yeah, these could all happen, but people could also start to play shit ton of low impact hand traps because they're scared of set combo piles. But in my opinion, books are 100% going to be played a little less. They're still decent because they still trade 2 for 1 against Unchained XEs. They're still probably the best card against Purely. And they also turn off the Mirror Knight in Graveyard against Chimera, so it does trade 1 for 1. Against Flunder, they turn off Empin. Against Tier, they turn off like 1 for 1 as well. So they are still very decent 1 for 1 trades, sometimes even 2 for 1 trades. They just got less good when going first. So maybe we'll be seeing less books in the main deck and they will only be in the side deck. Or if they are in the main deck, there will probably not be 6 of them in main and side combined. So overall, there's going to be less books in the format, which is very good for us, especially with the Chaos Base hit. Then expect more direct hate against Unchained. So more Nibirus, more Gravekeeper's Inscription, which is going to be very, very scary for us. So we could get collateraled by that. Then probably less hate against Purely just because they got hit by all of the Kashtira hate as well, with all of the books, Kurikaras, Kaijus, stuff like that. So definitely see, we have to respect Purely more. It's probably going to be on a rise, and I still think I'm going to have a similar amount of hate against that deck as well, just because I have to respect it. It's basically the next Kashtira Rise Hut thing, where if noirs on the board, it's gonna be so hard to win this game. We do have some game against that because of Borrowland, but it's gonna be tough. And then, a good thing, less Bystials are gonna be played against us. There will probably not be that many Bystials in the side deck, and if there are Bystials in the side deck, it's probably not Magnamod. Maybe it's 1 Magnamod, 2 Drewsworm to hit Unchained, but having less Magnamods against us is really, really good, because then we don't have to play against 2 Bystials, but only against 1, which is of course a very welcome addition. What does it all mean to us? What do we have to do with our deck building, with our knowledge of the format? What do we have to think about? Well, consistency-wise, we should be super fine. We don't have to care about that. We do have a shit ton of good dragon cards, which we can still play. Going for Regain is going to be mandatory in my opinion. Not only because Branded Beast is really bad right now, but even if Branded Beast was insane, we would still have to go for Regain, just because getting into the Magnamod every turn is going to be super, super important for us, so we definitely want to get into that resource loop. Especially with Nip being in the format as well, Regain is going to be the way. We struggle more with books. Without having more Chaos Space, or with having more Chaos Space I should say, we do lack ways of getting a level 4 or lower dragon onto the board once our normal summon got booked. This is fine because books is probably going to be played less, but it's still a very huge problem. If you play the deck and you go second and you normal summon black metal and it gets booked, that shit sucks ass. It's still a 1-for-1 trade, but the tempo loss of our normal summon being removed is so huge. We now struggle with getting a dark into the board. We don't get the 2 bodies of the normal summon, so actually a 2-for-1 trade with even more tempo loss for us. So that is going to be huge, and having only 1 Chaos Base and 3 Quick Launch for that to still play afterwards without relying on like double Bystial into a 2 is going to be tough, especially with less Bystial. So this is scary, but they're also, like I said, probably going to be less books, so we still should be in a fine-ish region. And overall, I think we get better matchups and have less auto-lose matchups against us. Of course, Kashira is dead, so we don't have to care about a Rysart. Flunder is probably going to get some more steam with being able to counter Unchained, and also Gravekeeper's Inscription could be in a lot of decks to counter Unchained, and it could also counter us, though it's probably not main deck worthy just because it's too bad against all of the other decks here, like purely against Branded Chimera. It probably doesn't do enough. So it's probably going to be like a side deck staple, and in the end, there were formats where there was a shit ton of Shifter. So we still should be fine if it just stays in the side decks. And overall, the matchups get better, more Unchained in the format makes it super easy for us to play against that deck, because we should still win that matchup more often than not, even with only 1 Chaos Base and 1 Magnamod. And then no Kashtira just makes it so much easier to play the game. So overall, especially for the amount of percentile hits we got on the ban list, we actually got away from the ban list super, super fine. You have to think about it. There were 3 realistic hits. 2 of them were against us. 1 was against another deck. And you could even argue we got better out of that. If you take everything into consideration, what happens with the meta, you could make the case that we are better off after the ban list than we were before. But definitely let me know what you think about the ban list down in the comment section below. Class is dismissed. You guys are free to leave, and you have to test for the new format. That's your homework. Peace.